Hello and welcome to what's turning out to be an absolute stonker of a day. Beautiful day here in equally beautiful Nova Scotia. About 14 degrees. November the 12th, 13th, something like that. So really pleased to be in my shirt sleeves, in my t-shirt. Just doing a little bit of pruning. We'll come to that in a minute though. So November. Everything's really winding down in the veg garden and in the flower garden. So you would have thought there'd not be that much work to be done around the garden, but actually this is a really good time to be doing quite a bit of work around your garden, whether it be in the veg garden or the flower garden. So I thought I'd give you 6 tips on what you could be doing in the garden in November, and that could be helping you a great deal for next year. One of those jobs is pruning your autumn fruiting raspberries, if you've got autumn fruiting raspberries. These have given me, I've said this at lots of different videos, an absolutely superb harvest. Best harvest I've had this year, and I've made all sorts of different raspberry dishes, raspberry jam, jam turnover, roly-poly, all sorts of different things. Absolutely delicious, eating them fresh. And but now the frosts came sort of last week, some relatively hard frosts, and they sort of wiped the remaining flowers and fruit out. So now autumn fruiting raspberries, they grow their fruit on this year's growth. So all of that grew in 1 year. So what you do at the end of that year, what I'm going to do now is cut them hard back, so that next year they can have space to grow up anew again. Your summer fruiting raspberries grow on the previous year's growth. So if you've got brand new raspberries this year, you would let them grow this year, and then they'll provide fruit next year, and then you'll cut those fruiting canes back and let your new canes grow again. Bit complicated, those summer fruiting ones. Probably why I've got the autumn fruiting raspberries. But anyway, all I'm doing is I'm going to cut them hard back all the way to the ground, as you can see, so that the new growth can get in. This year I think I'm going to actually thin these out a little bit, so that they I've got a good amount of canes in there that will produce me a good amount of fruit, but not overcrowding. Now, I could have waited till the spring to cut these back, but as a rule, I like to cut them back in the autumn time, because all that waving around, the wind, the snow, etc., smashing down on the actual canes, could damage the plant. So cut them all the way back. But here's a couple of things you could do with the actual canes. You can either shred them, stick them in the actual compost, or, as I'm going to do with some of them, lay a load of them over the actual bed. Once you've cut it all down, just lay a load of the canes over the bed and give the little insects and microorganisms, all that sort of stuff, a bit of a house over the cold winter, somewhere protected, and it will protect the canes as well a bit from the frosts. So there's a bit of an idea you can do with, I've got lots of canes there, so that is a good idea for those. So autumn fruiting raspberries, prune them right back. So before we leave the old raspberry patch, here we are, all cut back. A good idea is to sweep through the actual bed as well for any more of the old, more perennial weeds, pernicious plants. So while I haven't got too many here, what I do have, which is a weed at the end of the day, is a plant in the wrong place, is quite a few valerian seeds that I've blown over from wherever I've got valerian in other parts of the garden, and they can get in and really sort of become rather thugs. So I've got them out, and there's some aqualesia and a few things like that I don't want in here competing with my raspberries, so they're out. So next, all I'm going to do is I'm going to put some mulch down. Well, I'm going to talk, oh, there's another seed, look, more aqualesia here. I don't want it here. Let's get it out. We'll talk a bit more about mulch in a minute, but voila, nice mulch of wood chips. That'll protect the soil nicely, and plants, give a bit more sort of protection from the cold for the actual plants, and that'll break down over the winter a little bit, you know, underneath, and the microorganisms will pull it down into the soil, and that'll feed the soil ultimately. And I'm also, as I said, going to leave a load of these, you know, so the leaves now, these leaves will break down and fall off into the soil eventually, and again be brought down. And what this will also do is prevent any cats coming on here and doing their business, because cats definitely don't like standing on thorns. So there we go. Talking of mulch, now it's a fantastic time to be putting the mulch down. There's a video up there on the up in the whichever corner it is, you know, with a good description of, you know, mulches and how you use mulches and why it's such a good idea. But you know, it's a great time now. Get a good couple of inches of mulch down, and that'll protect the soil over the winter, prevent any weeds, seeds from germinating, etc., or, you know, minimize the amount of weed seeds generating, and just generally protect your plants and your soil, and start to feed it as, you know, as the actual, whether you're using wood chips as I am here, or seaweed like I do often in the veg patch. Could be any sorts of organic mulch is what I'm talking about really. So, you know, get a good couple of inches down. It's better to do, you know, a small area thickly than spread a mulch, you know, over a wide area really thinly, and it doesn't do any good really. And like these chippings, these are often easy to get for free. You know, I was literally walking down the road, and there was a tree surgeon, arborist, whatever you want to call them, tree cutter, busy doing someone's house. Big pile of it, and what they normally have to do is take it down the dump, and they have to pay to dump it. So don't be afraid to go and ask if you see someone, you know, cutting up their trees, etc., what are they doing with their wood chippings, because as you can see, that big pile there, all for free, and that's going to help do my orchard beds, which are, you know, again, as you can see, are quite substantial. So lots of mulch needed. But now is a fantastic time to do mulch, whether it's on your flower beds or on your veg beds, as you saw with the or my fruit bed, as you saw with the raspberries. So, in case you don't know what these tall feathery fronds are, it's asparagus. Yes, asparagus indeed. So, as a rule, you know, your asparagus is the sort of earliest vegetable really that we get in the actual garden. In here I get it sort of late May, maybe early June, and those little soldiers peeking their heads upright above the soil is one of the most fantastic sights a veg gardener can have really, you know, getting those early veg. And, you know, it has a season of about 2 months, and then the ones that are left over that you haven't harvested, you obviously let, and they grow up to these big tall plants, and then they gain their strength from these beautiful leaves. Now they've turned yellow now, so they're green in the season and they turned yellow, so that is a sign that you want to cut them back. So as usual, cut them hard back, same as with the raspberries. Cut them hard back, and again, as with the raspberries, once you've got it all cleared, get in amongst it and get rid of some of these weeds. Asparagus definitely doesn't like competition, so you want to get any weeds that you see in there, and I've got lots of different ones all over the place in here. Get rid of all of the weeds, make sure everything's cut back, and then put a nice mulch again on here. This one over the last few years has had beautiful seaweed, and that's made some absolutely lovely soil, but the weeds are loving it as well, so I've got to get amongst it and get rid of these. Yes, so cut back your asparagus, and again, I want to cut asparagus back definitely, because again, the wind waving this around, it's going to damage the roots underneath, and we definitely don't want that, because they don't like disturbance, asparagus, once they're in. So cut them down, get rid of the weeds, give them mulch, ready for winter, ready for that beautiful harvest, those first peaking little soldiers in the early spring or mid-spring. Beautiful. So on the subject of weeds, in mostly my flower beds, my veg beds I like to clear away as much as possible, but in my flower beds I'm also trying to leave a lot of things over the winter, so that whether it be butterflies or any of the sort of insects, good or bad, bad or good, insects have got somewhere to sort of live over the winter, shelter. I like to leave as much of these plants, like this phlox, I'm going to leave this over the winter, let it die back naturally. But I also want to clear quite a bit of stuff in the beds, because I want to look out for those nasty perennial weeds, so that they don't get a chance over the winter, dandelion, to get themselves settled in where, you know, in areas, well, in any areas that I don't want them actually. And here's a whacking great big one, because obviously over the winter, over the summer, there's been a lot of foliage in and around everywhere, so I haven't been able to have a look as much as I want to. And again, look at that, look, great big dandelion. Let's get these out now, and also get these out now so they don't, you know, get themselves too established over the winter. But also, where's that gone? Here it is. Things like some plants that have grown up in wrong areas that you don't want them. Like this rose campion. Why don't I put this somewhere else where I do want it? It will do. So you can still move these around. So you look, then there's a valerian sneaked itself in there as well. The blackguard. Anyway, let's get that in there. You know, and again, your herbaceous perennials, any of your herbaceous perennials can really sort of be moved around. It's a good time now. You know, most things have died down. You can get a good look at what you want and where. And another thing you can do as well is, you know, once you've had a little clear out, you don't want to move things, take some photographs of what is still where before everything dies down, and then in the springtime you know that the phlox, this phlox, I want to move this in the springtime, so I can, you know, I know it was there, I know it was the purple phlox, I can move that to where I want to move it in the spring, because I've got the photographic evidence of it being there. So there's a few little things in the flower bed. Also, have you planted all your spring flowering bulbs yet? I've been busy over the last month getting all the tulips, lots of them as you can see in pots over there, and daffodils, etc. Trying to fill out my different areas. And I've got here some allium. I love allium, but again, this is a great time to be getting your spring flowering bulbs in just before the frosts now, and then they have a chance over the winter to get that freezing, cooling period that they need to sort of really trigger them into good flowering. So get your spring flowering bulbs in, plant them nice and deep, and you shall have a beautiful spring display, tulips and daffodils and all sorts of iris, etc, etc. So don't forget, get them in. I always like to plant them in sort of threes as well. I find is a good number for plants. So now is a good time to be moving shrubs or trees, anything like that. I want to wait till they've dropped their leaves, like I have with this pear, and then I've also gave it a bit of a good haircut. I've given it a good severe pruning really. I've near enough cut this in half, because obviously again over the winter time, once it goes in, the roots won't be fully settled, so we don't want loads of top growth there for it to be waving around in the wind and obviously ruining the plant itself. So I've given that a good haircut. Like I said, I've waited until the leaves have dropped off, dug a good deep hole. You know, I'm going to plant it up to where the actual tree was planted before. You can see the line pretty well there, and then just fill it in nice and firm. Once I've filled this in, I'm going to give it a good mulch. In fact, before I put this in, give it a good water as well. And I'll give it a water at the end. This tree, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to train it as an espalier out sideways, and this is, I'm in my orchard now, so this, and I'm going to have another pear tree just over here, because this pear needs a pear to have fruit, etc. But this is going to be like an espalier, so hopefully that will work. But once I have planted it all up nice and firm, giving it another water, you know, and this is going to be the same for all of whatever shrub or tree that you're going to move. And then give it a good mulch. Leave a bit of a gap around the actual tree itself, or shrub. I'm going to put a bit more mulch there, but for the purpose of this, nice and firm, a good drink. Great time of year to be moving these plants. So a few last jobs. Summer flowering bulbs. If you haven't lifted those already, your tender type ones, Abyssinian, gladioli, things like dahlias, etc., tubers, anything like that that's tender, and you live in an area like here, Nova Scotia, that has quite severe frosts and freezing over the winter, they won't survive outside. So lift those, get rid of any excess dirt, and then cut the foliage right back down to just about an inch above the actual tuber or bulb or whatever it is, corm, etc. Could be gladioli. Bring them into somewhere sheltered, away from the sort of frost now, and let them dry. Give them a good brushing off, like I said. Have a quick inspection, especially on things like dahlias. Inspections for any sort of rotting parts of the actual tuber, any soft bits. Cut them out now so that they don't infect the rest of the plant. So that is your summer flowering bulbs. Get them, and then you can store them away in any of the sort of ways. Cover them in newspaper or some dry compost or sand, etc. A nice cool dark place, frost free over winter, and just keep an eye on them every few weeks. In the greenhouse here, as you can see, I know we often put this off till the springtime, but it's actually a bad time to do your spring cleaning because you've got all your other stuff that you want to be doing in spring, don't you? You want to be sowing seeds and planting things, etc., and getting everything ready. It's a bit of a rush. So spring cleaning is not really a good idea. Why not do it in November, December? I've already started that in here already, giving the place a bit of a dust off. I had cleared most of the sides off, but I'm just now using it to sort of store the bulbs and tubes, etc., just while they're drying out. So I'm keeping them there, but clear all the stuff from this year out of the way, and get hold of your pots. Start giving them a clean out. You don't have to like immaculately clean them, but just give them a hosing out, get most of the dirt off, and then store them away ready for the springtime. I've already put a mulch of my wood chips that I've got through. I've got that down, so that's a nice clean floor now, ready to go. And just generally give the place a bit of a tidy up. Maybe give the insides of the windows a bit of a clean up, and ready for winter. So there we go, a few jobs for you to be doing in November, December time. And you thought you could be putting your feet up. Oh no, not as an optimistic gardener, you can't. Get this work sort of done now, and then again you won't be so rushed in the springtime, and you'll be paid back by, you know, beautiful veg, lots of good soil, lots of spring flowering bulbs, and your summer bulbs ready to get going for next summer. So all I've got left to say is, yes, you guessed it, job's a good one.